Welcome to our latest episode of Legends of Cricket Unplugged. Today we have with us a former wicket-keeper batsman from Zimbabwe, a former captain of Zimbabwe as well, a remarkable figure both on and off the field. He's had an incredible journey with Zimbabwean cricket, having played for Zimbabwe for the best part of 12 years, and he has the record for the second highest number of dismissals for Zimbabwe, just behind Andy Flower, which is a great record in itself. He made his debut for Zimbabwe at the age of 18, became vice-captain to Heath's streak at the age of 19, and then went on to become Zimbabwean national team captain at the age of 20. He was known as the youngest Test captain in 2004, a record only broken in 2019 by Rashid Khan of Afghanistan. Delighted to have with us today Tatenda Taibu, former Zimbabwean captain. Morning, though. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Sharez. How are you?
Very well indeed. Very well indeed. As I mentioned, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're a very busy man with many different roles that you're carrying out at the moment in cricket. So thanks for speaking to us. Tatenda, you've had a remarkable journey in cricket with Zimbabwe, and you've always been a figure that has had a massive contribution, not just for Zimbabwe, but for global cricket, I believe, both on and off the field. And we'd really like to get into that in a bit more detail over the course of this short podcast. Before we get into it, could you maybe just talk through your early life in terms of how you got into cricket and how you sort of first started making your debut into the Zimbabwean team, if that's all right?
So I was the first of our family to engage in the sport. Cricket was not known in the areas where I grew up, an area called Highfield. So Highfield is a high density suburb in Harare, which is the capital city. So Zimbabwe Cricket Union, as it was called then, had a program to try and spread cricket into the four corners of the world, of Zimbabwe. And Chipembere, which was my primary school, was one of the primary schools that was picked for that program. So what Zimbabwe Cricket Union did was they picked 3 or 4 schools in each high-density suburb area. So in Highfield and another area called Glenora and another area called Glenview. So they would pick three primary schools that had either the land for the sport, or number 2, headmasters or headmistresses that were keen on sport. Because most of these schools are only keen on education, because Zimbabwe is quite big on education. So then those 3-4 schools would then play a mini tournament. And then obviously the best school that wins will then play against the Group A schools, which were already playing cricket. And I was lucky to be at one of those primary schools where cricket was introduced. We were lucky to have a guy called Stephen Mangongo, who was a very tough coach. And if you made his team, you were not allowed to play any other sport, but it had to be cricket all year round. And Zimbabwe is blessed with the weather that you can actually do that. So we then, as soon as we got selected, it was cricket every day. So we had to get better. And he was a good coach as well. He still is a good coach. And so that's how I got introduced into the sport. So how how you were selected was, it was a PE lesson. So during the PE lesson, cricket was introduced, and then he would ask us to bowl or throw the ball, or hold a cricket bat in the way that he would have demonstrated. If you did it correctly or to his satisfaction, then you were put to the right, and if you didn't, you were put to the left. And then those that were put to the right would then be asked to come for afternoon practices, which was from 2 to 5. Monday to Friday. So I was one of those ones that he felt was natural, and that's how I took up the sport and never left it after that.
You mentioned that you started bowling and holding the bat the way he was demonstrating. How did you then make the transition into wicket keeping? Because that's obviously a significant change, and something perhaps that children growing up, from my experience, everyone wants to be a bowler or a batsman. Wicket keepers, I think it's not necessarily maybe the first thing that comes to your mind. So how did you sort of make that interesting transition?
So that came way later.
Okay.
So I've gone in. I've started doing well in primary school. I get a scholarship to a good high school.
Excellent.
And it was the second year of my high school. So what happened was, there was a gentleman called the late Bill Flower, who was Andy Flower and Grant Flower's father. So Bill Flower used to hold these what he called the strugglers tournaments and strugglers week. So it was, he used to go around the country, pick up the best talented cricketers in the country, and he would have them to play, either practice together or play against each other. And you know how it is when you get a group of good cricketers together, a group of good whatever industry. They challenge themselves, and you start to compare yourselves against others, and that way you're just simply pushing yourself without anyone doing anything. So he used to do that. So on one of these games, he was umpiring, and the wicket keeper, a guy called Glenn Goosen, had not turned up for the game, for reasons that we weren't aware of. So Bill Flower says, "Okay, Glenn is not here today. Who would like to volunteer to keep?" Now, without thinking, I just raised my hand, and then he says, "Okay," because I used to at that time I used to bowl off spin. And he says, "Okay, we'll give you the gloves and keeping pads." So there you go. And I started keeping. Now, whilst I was keeping, Andy Flower came to see his dad about something. So now we've got the national captain that has just turned up at our game.
Okay.
And it was whatever he had turned up for was so important that Bill Flower asked him to get onto the field and to collect whatever he was collecting. So he came in, and obviously we are all in awe, seeing Andy Flower live. And then he says, "Oh, just stand with me for a bit, and just watch a bit of cricket while these kids play." So we carry on playing. And then he asked him what he thought about my keeping. And Andy Flower says, "Oh, he's a natural." And any youngster who will hear that from a national captain, that is amazing news. And I was like, oh, so if he thinks I'm a natural, then I must forget about bowling and continue keeping. And then Bill Flower then says to Andy, "Because you say that he's a natural, I'm going to come to your house to collect keeping pads and keeping gloves, because he's not a keeper, he's just keeping this game, and then so that he'll have keeping gloves and keeping pads." And true to his word, a week later, Bill Flower turned up to my school. And so obviously I get called. "You've got a visitor," and that's Bill Flower. He's got a pair of keeping gloves and a pair of keeping pads that came from the national captain, Andy Flower, and I never turned back.
And Tatenda, just for our viewers, you mentioned, Bill Flower said that you were a natural keeper. What does that actually mean? Does that mean that you were very agile and you were very easy to move, you anticipated the ball very easily, or what does that really mean?
So that means you just catch the ball. Your hand-eye coordination is good, and your body positions in terms of where your head goes, in terms of how your feet move, in terms of how your hands catch the ball, as in how you give in or how you cushion the ball, is quite natural. So people, when we are now coaching, now that I'm a coach, when we are coaching someone, fielding or catching the ball, the main three things that you talk about is your head position. Your head, that's where your eyes are. So if your head position is correct and is aligned correctly, and you're steady enough, your eye level, your eyes are level, and therefore you've got a best position to be able to watch the ball, which is the main thing. So that's where the head comes in.
Okay.
Now your hands, they've got to be away from your body, and you've got to cushion the ball when the ball comes, and then you've got to catch the ball in the line where the ball is. And that's number two. And number three is just the timing of catching. So the ball doesn't hit your gloves, and then you still haven't closed the ball. You closed off the ball, or the ball, you close off the hands before the ball comes. So it's just the timing of catching the ball. And then obviously how you move your feet. If the ball comes to the side and you move, either to the right by skipping across, and quickly judging if that ball is now a bit further away where you can't skip across to it, then you have to throw in a dive. So we teach people this.
Okay.
But Andy Flower had said that I don't need coaching for that. I'm quite a natural. Yeah.
In terms of the modern game, and I'm sure you still follow the modern game quite closely as well. If you look at some of the world class wicket keepers around the world at the
Mm,
moment, the likes of, let's say, whether it's Henrik Klassen for South Africa, whether it's Mohammad Rizwan for Pakistan, Rishabh Pant for India, or Joss Butler. From those four, who would you say is the most natural wicket keeper in your opinion?
I will have definitely not Rishabh Pant,
Okay.
definitely not Joss
Mhm.
Butler. It will. What was the fourth one? You said Klassen and was
Rizwan, Mohammad Rizwan,
Rizwan. Um, it
and
will have
Henrik Klassen
it'll have to be between Henry and Rizwan.
and
The
Rizwan.
other two are more batters than keepers. They still do a job. But if I am to just talk about purely keeping, it will have to be Rizwan and Klassen.
That's really good insights. Really, really good insights on how you've described and articulated what it means being a national wicketkeeper and how our viewers can sort of map that onto some of the current generation of cricketers in terms of
Mm,
natural ability. If we fast forward, so at the age of 18, you made your debut for Zimbabwe. At the age of 19, you became vice captain to Heath Streak, who has always been a very well-known fast bowling icon around the world. And then at the age of 20, you became captain of Zimbabwe as well.
mm,
Just talk us through those couple of years in terms of
mm,
making your debut for Zimbabwe, and then that's almost a meteoric rise within the space of 2 to 3 years,
mm.
debuting for Zimbabwe at such a young age, and then becoming captain at such a young age as well, which I think was a world record at the time in terms of youngest Test captain, which was intact till 2019.
Mm. There's a bit of a blank space just prior to me being vice captain or prior to me making my debut.
Mhm.
So I actually made the squad when I was 16. So I was learning under Andy Flower when I got picked as soon as I finished my A level. Sorry, not my A level, my O level.
Mhm.
So then I got picked into the squad, but I was just traveling with the team. Went to the Caribbean, went to England,
Mhm.
um, and so I was with the team for about a couple of years before I played my first
Okay.
game. So and I'm a very fast learner. You give me anything right now, and you say, okay, now we're gonna start learning a new language. I'll be on it, and you'll be surprised how quickly I'll learn. I'm just the way God just made me that way. So I learned really fast. And when I got my debut, it didn't take me time to learn the speed. I think what was left for me to learn was just the speed of the game and getting used to the speed of the game.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the tactical side of it, I'd just been learning, and I was lucky to have several players that were ready to dish out a lot of information to me. So Andy Flower, as I've already mentioned, I used to practice a lot with Grant Flower as well. And another one that used to dish out a lot of information to me is Guy Whittle.
Yep.
He was another one, was ready to just let me, ready to ask me questions, ready to let me know what needs to be done during situations. Um, there was Neil Johnson
Yep.
on the batting side. He'll always say, hit the ball straight. If you're in doubt, hit the ball straight. If you want to hit big, hit it over the bowler. There are no fielders over the bowler, and so I was lucky to have a lot of players that were always trying to get me to get better. They didn't need to. Henry Olonga was another one,
Of course.
but Henry Olonga, it wasn't more cricket, it was more just lifestyle outside of the game. Um, and we shared the same religion. So just being a better human being than a cricketer, probably he helped me a lot when I was, on tours during that. So I was lucky to have a lot of that. So I learned a lot during those 2 years. So when I then made my debut, it straight away I started, scoring runs, and started showing leadership, which I'm told I'm quite natural at that as well. Um, and it didn't take time for me to be given the responsibility of being vice captain, even though everyone knew that I was still learning the game, and obviously
Mhm.
subsequently, being the youngest captain at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I say, I think when you burst onto the scene, I remember that period between 2003, 2004, 2005. And I remember, and hopefully you won't mind me saying this, I remember this a very young Zimbabwean cricketer coming onto the scene,
Yeah,
fairly short in height, but very capable with his ability. And
yeah,
then he was leading the Zimbabwean national team as well. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tatenda, but when you took on the captaincy, I know that there were upcoming some challenges with the board, and there was an exodus, I think, of some of the senior players potentially.
yes.
And you took on a very inexperienced side, didn't you? I mean, how was that sort of feeling? You being given the captaincy, which I'm sure was a great honor, national team captaincy, but at the same time losing some of those key inspirational figures that you'd been around the last couple of years.
Yes. So and a lot of the players that left were very close to me as well. And at the time, I was communicating with both the players that were on Exodus, and then the board as well, because of the misunderstandings that were there. Now, so you can imagine how difficult it would have been. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
It's a little bit chilly here in England. So,
whereabouts are you based?
say again.
Whereabouts are you based?
I'm in Nottingham.
In Nottingham. Okay.
Yeah. So I was in communication with the two. So I was in communication with my colleagues that were, on Exodus, and then with the board as well, because they were obviously asking me to be the captain. And I was trying to find out if there's a way to resolve the problems that were there. And then it seemed that there wasn't going to be a way where they could come on the same table. So, but cricket had to go on, and so I accepted the offer, and yes, I did understand that it was going to be tough, and it was a very it was going to be a tough ride for however long it was going to be. Initially I thought it wasn't going to last for a long time, because I thought surely they will, common sense will prevail at some point. And I thought, well, maybe it's just a matter of a couple of series, and then the other guys will come back and will be stronger, because there are certain players that obviously would have been on the fringe, and they would show that, they're actually ready for the next jump, and then now mix it with the ones that are experienced. Then you've got a strong team. But that wasn't the case. The problems then got deeper and deeper, and some of the players actually then left for good. Then, so from thinking that is just going to be a couple of series to it going for years. Now that was the tough part, because when you're going through a tough period, say even as a batter, just an individual, when you're going through a tough patch, if you know that you're only having to bear this tough patch for a couple of months, you can be strong for that 2 months. But if you start thinking it's going to be years, and it's going to be a decade, you might be defeated mentally before you actually get defeated physically. So as it went to the third month and the fourth month and another series, and at that time it started looking like, because Heat Streak then came back with a few other players, but not enough to be as strong as we used to be. Now, if we started looking at the pattern, whenever I would not bet well, we would really have a very low score.
Yep.
And when it didn't get wickets, they would plunge 400, and even Sri Lanka scored 700 on one of the innings. So that pattern, you see it, you start seeing that pattern often, and that is what started taking energy out of me. When I was thinking, when I play well, we're losing a game, or when I bet well, we lose a game. But when I bet badly, we get annihilated. And then similarly, with Streaky. If he didn't take wickets, then they would plunder a lot of runs, and then if he got wickets, would lose. And I think we just won a couple of games during that period. And so that was the tough part. And I remember going to the board and asking them to resolve that, the problems. And I said, I'm not going to be able to do this for much longer.
So was that one of the main underlying factors when you decided to move away from Zimbabwe cricket for a couple of years? I think that period between 2005 to 2007, when you.
No, that wasn't the factor.
Okay.
The factor was I then because I started going to the meetings. So before, as vice captain, I knew I was still learning the trait of the game. So I asked Heath Streak to go on my behalf when the captain and the vice captain were needed. So sometimes we would actually go for board meetings. So, but I chose not to go for those meetings. I was like, let me get better on my game first. This will sort itself out when the game, because at the end of the day, the main thing is the game.
Absolutely.
So there's no board meeting without the game. So I said, if I'm a good cricketer, then the field is sorted, then we can have board meetings. So now that I'm captain, I then start going for these board meetings. And now that's when I start learning more. Like I did mention earlier, I learn very fast. So I started learning a lot more. Then I started having my own questions. So I thought, well, okay, let me go and have a conversation with the powers that be. So I asked for a meeting with the CEO, I asked for a meeting with the chairman, and I started mentioning my findings and my thoughts and how I saw things. And I think that was the disappointing part for me, was instead of these concerns being looked at, the conversation was always diverted, and that was disheartening. So then I thought, well, you know what? Some of these things are the things that were being raised by the group that moved away, and I'm now bringing the same issues. So surely someone has got to look into them quite closely, because when it happened with the Exodus players, when that happened in the country, it was turned as a political, not a political, as a racial divide, because all of them were white players.
Yeah.
So when I then raised the same concerns, then the race issue was no longer there. Now, but surely someone had to really look at it, because now, if it was a racial issue, now that we've got a black player, does it still remain a racial issue? Now, that's then what transpired. And when I realized that it wasn't really going to be looked at, I then decided I was going to leave. But before I left, I then got calls from high profile officials from the in politics, wanting to find out why I was going to leave, because cricket had started really growing in the country, and part of that was my name, because I mean I was breaking records as a young player.
You were also a homegrown product,
Exactly.
a world-class wicketkeeper, well respected on the global stage, and you are now leading your national team as well.
Yes, and now if anyone knows how the culture in Zimbabwe, it's to make it, the parents will be pushing for their kids. For you to make it, you've got to go the educational road. Now, so sport is not regarded. It's like, don't play sport. It's not going to get you anywhere. And now you've got a young man who's breaking records, and I just bought my second house, and that had come on national television. And now parents are now saying, you know what? Go and play cricket.
Yeah.
So
So you were an inspiration to the youth.
Indeed, indeed. On billboards, etc. Now, so that changed the way sport was viewed. And cricket, they'd actually predicted that if we had continued on the same path that we were on, cricket was going to overtake football, because
Okay.
football is number one sport in Zimbabwe. And we were on course on that, because I remember during that period of time, we used to see kids playing football on the streets, but now it was cricket on the streets. Um, so, so that's so obviously the political world wanted to find out what's going on. So you've got this boy who's making changes in sport, and he's saying now he wants to retire. He's just broken a national record, a world record recently. Um, and I'd also become the first black captain in the country.
Correct.
So I started getting these calls, and I obviously adhered to those calls, and I kept mentioning what was going on. So it then there was this political juggle, and I ended up just having to leave and went to Bangladesh and England after that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think kudos to you, Tatenda, because for all the reasons that you've already mentioned, I think leading in that sort of stage where you're a growing name in the country, but also globally as well, and to have to step away because of some of these things that are happening within the board, which
Mm,
obviously you voiced and tried getting them to address those concerns, but they're not being addressed. I think it
mm,
was quite a big decision. Um, you were away for 2 years.
mm.
Is that right? From
Yeah,
2005 to 2007?
yes.
Um, you came back with a bang.
Mm,
In 2007, you came back, and I think it was your first or second series against South Africa where you scored 107 not out. One of the questions I definitely wanted to ask you was um, the 107 not out versus South Africa,
mm.
that or the 98 versus Canada in the 2011 World Cup. How would you rate both of those innings? Or is there an innings that you would rate higher than that from an ODI perspective?
Um, so there were 207s against South Africa.
Yeah.
So I think I would go the first one, the one that you've mentioned, is probably I rate that higher than the second one that I scored in South Africa. Um, but the um, the first 100 against South Africa is the one that I rate higher than the second one uh, in South Africa. Now, uh, there was a 40 in the second, because it was a
Yep.
three match series. So I think I got 22, if I'm not mistaken, in the first game in Bulawayo. Then there
Mhm.
was a 40 in the second game, and then the 107 in the third game. Now, of all my one-day innings, the 40 against South Africa, we lost that game, and I scored 40 of about 40 balls or 30, 38 balls or something like that, is my most special game.
So,
Now,
so, so
I've
I,
never
re- I,
really,
I read I read that somewhere else as well, and I was very
yeah,
keen to ask why that was, by the way.
yeah. So that was the first time I experienced what they call being in the zone. That's why I regard it as a special innings. So you've heard players saying, "Oh, the player was in the zone," or if you watch, eh, when you watch movies and you watch someone say, uh, you know, golf, they normally mention it or show it in golf, where everything goes silent. But in sports movies, where they show everything goes silent and everything is almost like in slow motion to the person,
Hmm.
that is a real experience.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I experienced that, where everything is silent and you see the ball, and Dale Steyn, who's
Yep.
bowling 145, swinging, but you see the ball almost as slow motion, and it's like you can't make a mistake.
Hmm.
And you see the rotation of the ball that's coming at 145 kilometers an hour. And that's the first time I actually experienced being in the zone. So that's how I regard it as a special innings. It's there's noise on the field, there is noise in the crowd, but you don't hear it. You're so zoned out to this one single thing that everything else blacks out. So that's why it's my most special innings of
Was
all
great.
of them.
And Just talk us through the bowlers you faced over there because you had Dale Steyn, you had Morning Morkel as well, I think at the time.
Moni Moko was
Um,
there.
and yeah,
Philander was there. Pollock, Makayantini.
yeah.
That was the firepower they
Yeah,
had.
so one of the strongest world attacks, I think, at that time as well. Would you say that was the strongest bowling lineup you ever faced in your career, or would you say there were any others on par at the time?
Um, at the
I seem
time,
to recall, sorry, I seem to recall you faced Pakistan as well.
yes,
Um,
Pakistan. During that era, there would have been South Africa was up there. South Africa, Australia, and Pakistan
yeah,
um, were the three most difficult for me at that time. Sri Lanka was a little bit. It was there but not there. What I mean is, with the other ones that I've mentioned, you didn't have any breathing space. So you had one good bowler after another. Whereas with Sri Lanka, you knew that you had to get through Chaminda Vas, and then later on you have to deal with Mutaya.
Muralidharan. Yeah,
The others, no disrespect to them, but they were not at the level of these two. So if you dealt with them, then you knew that you could deal with the others. Whereas, if we're talking about Pakistan at the time, you had Shoaib Akhtar running in from the one end, then you've got Wasim Akram on the other end,
absolutely.
then you had Saklain Mushtaq, coming in, and then you had Rana Navid and Muhammad Sami. So you had bowlers that you think, keepers, where do I rest here? And the South African lineup that I just given you, it's just you only had one rest period, which was the spinner, and sometimes they didn't even they didn't even bring in the spinner. So so yeah, and then you've got Australia. There was Brett Lee coming from the top end, and you've got McGrath on the other end. Then you've got Gillespie, and then you've got and then Shane Warne is waiting for you. So you had so those ones were quite tough because there was no breathing space. With other bowlers, with other teams, you had a couple of bowlers where you think, okay, now I can try and do something here.
So Tatenda, that is the first time I saw you, by the way. So there was a series in Pakistan, I think, that you were at in
Mm,
2003 or four, I think it was. I can't remember exactly, but there was a series that you attended, I think, in Pakistan at the
mm,
time. And I believe you were playing at the time. And all I remember is that, as I mentioned earlier on, there was a very young-looking batsman who was
mm.
facing some of these quicks that you just mentioned, obviously. And I can't remember exactly how much you got, but you looked very comfortable compared to a lot of the other batsmen that I saw at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this kid at the time definitely has a lot of potential. And then obviously you just grew and grew from there onwards. Titinda, just before I go on to the section where you sort of re-entered Zimbabwe cricket,
Mm,
um, and if some of this you can't speak about, by the way, that's absolutely fine as well. There's no issues around that. We can park this to one side. I know that it was a challenging time for you and your family as well
mm,
during that period away because of some of the things that you mentioned from
mm, mm,
a socio-political perspective,
mm,
some of the pressures that were being exerted on you. How
mm.
difficult a time was that for you mentally, and then to sort of make that decision to then eventually come back as well?
So that was tough. I mean, but if it was just me, then it would have been nothing because my colleagues laugh at me because they're like, is there anything that you actually fear? Um, I'm not, by nature, I'm not a fearful person. So if it was just me, it would have been nothing. I would have just gone through it. Yes, obviously there's the normal fear that goes through everyone if obviously your life is in danger. It's normal, but it's not something that would make me fail to sleep. I would sleep 8 hours easily, knowing that that's someone is after my head. It wouldn't
Yeah.
bother me, right? But when there's family involved, so when
Of course.
my wife was really fearful, because at the time she almost got kidnapped, and obviously we just had our first son, and he was around a couple of weeks old.
Wow.
So now when you start thinking, okay, something can happen to my family, something can happen to my wife here. Now that was what was really difficult for me. So we then decided to leave. Now, the coming back part. So this is how it transpired. So there were a lot of changes that happened when I was away. So I went to Bangladesh, then I went to England, then I went to Namibia.
Mm-hmm.
So our main sponsor was Old Mutual at the time.
Okay.
And that changed to Croco Motors. So the owner of Croco Motors saw that I'd now been asked to be captain for Namibia. And he says, well, he's our player. Why is he captaining Namibia? And I was scoring runs because we were playing against the South African, we're playing in the South African first class competition. He's scoring runs for Namibia. He's captaining Namibia. He should be playing for Zimbabwe. So he gets on a flight and he comes to see me in Namibia.
Mm-hmm.
So we have lunch, and he says, look, I'm the new, we're the new sponsors. And I've had a conversation with the board and I've asked them that you should come back.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to come back? So I said, well, I can come back if there are certain things in place. I want to see the contract, not so much the money in the contract, because I've always been content with what I get. But what I'm interested in is to see the content of the contract. Mm-hmm. Then he says, okay, I'll bring a contract next week. So he flew back to Zimbabwe, then flew again the following Saturday. Then he gave me the contract and I said, no, I'm not going to sign this contract. If I amend it and send it back to you, and if they agree to that, then I'll sign it.
Okay.
So then says, okay. So I amended the contract, so the way I did it, what I was simply trying to do is I was simply trying to be in a position where I can play for the country, but I'm not really attached to the organization.
Okay.
So, and so obviously he had his questions are like, how we've never had anyone do something like that, how are you going to do it? So that's, you'll see that I was never captain after that. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason, because my contract was such that I had to be free. I would speak what I wanted to speak. And they just made sure that I was not part of the interviews and things like that, because there are certain things that I pulled out. And it was simply, I could play for Zimbabwe, I could play the match, get my money and go. And I don't have to do all the other things that comes with, being a national player.
Yep.
Whether it's, interviews and things like that. I could just simply play and pack my bag and go, and no one would ask me. So that's how I did.
And how, when you came back into the team, how were you received by your fellow teammates at that time? Was it very welcoming? Was it back to normal, or was there a bit of friction with any of the members?
To be honest with you, I really didn't care.
Okay.
Yeah, I really didn't care because you see, I've always been sure of myself, and I was sure of my performance, and my performance always spoke of themselves. So in terms of the disruption that would come in the changing room because my position and someone having to give up their position because now I'm now back, I knew that was always going to happen. That always happens in any team. But if someone is good and someone is to stand toe to toe with me, then let's move and see the better one. Get the position. Anyway, that's one side. That's the cricket side. The other side was when I left, some of the players had promised that they were going to stand with me, and they had not stood with me. So they knew that that what had happened was not fair. Mm-hmm. But what I decided, what Loveness and I, Loveness being my wife, what we decided was we're going to go back, but we are not going to be caring for anyone outside of the field. So you play your game and then you leave. So we're not going to be inviting people to come and have lunch and dinner at my place and things like that. The normal things, that the normal get-togethers that teammates would have. So we're not going to do that. So we're just there you're just there to play cricket and then back. So things, because I had that in my mind, things changed. So I went in knowing exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to deal with the players in the changing room, and that's what I did. And they saw it straight away because I'm not good at hiding things. So if I'm not happy with you, I would just say,
You
you
let them
know,
know.
yeah, Sharez, I'm not happy with you, and this is the situation or whatever. And if I'm pleased with someone or something, I'll say, you know what, I'm happy with what you've done. You know, thank you very much. And I'm just like that. I'm just upfront and open with people. And they saw that. I made everyone aware that that's what I was going to do. And that's what I did up until I retired.
And coming back with that sort of mindset that you just described and articulated over there, Tatenda, where you said, we were very much of the mindset that we're going back on certain terms and conditions, which you've
Mhm.
obviously contracted and documented. And in addition to that, we're not going to care about what other people think. It's just,
Mhm.
we're going to look after ourselves because of
Yeah.
obviously the hardships you guys as a family had gone through as well. Did that give you extra motivation to and drive to want to perform? Obviously, you always want to perform on the field, but
Yeah. Mhm.
some of your performances, like the 107 that you scored
Yeah.
when you come back, did that give you extra fuel for wanting to not necessarily prove to others, but to prove to yourself that you're still able to perform at the highest level for Zimbabwe?
Yeah. So in terms of my skills and confidence on the play, that was never that was intact. That was never a doubt. Even if I had left, well, I can I can make a statement right now which would be very weird. Like right now, I could go back and play international cricket right now, and it won't take me a long time to get back into it.
Mhm.
Um, because I'm still fit. But so whether I've been away for 10 years or 15 years, I'm sure about my play. That's just one thing that I know. I'm sure about my play. Now, so that was always intact. There's never a question about.
Mhm.
In terms of motivation to do more, um, I think it helped in a way that, you see, I'm more a giver than a taker. So when 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 I was playing before, I'll be thinking, yes, I'm sorting out my game, but I also need to find out if this person is all right and this one is right. That's why they say, I'm a natural leader, because I would always be looking out. But if he does that, he can be better. So I'd start taking out my time and giving to others. Now, when I came back, I wasn't doing that. I, all the time was for me.
Mhm.
So that got me better, because yes, I would see that, oh, this person, I could help this person that way, but I wouldn't. I would just say, you know what? Stick to the plan. Stay on course. You want to get better. You get better. Use that time to, for yourself. And that's why, my scores after I came back were just, I was scoring, and, obviously made the IPL straight after that.
For
And
Cookout the Night Riders, yeah.
yeah, so I think how it helped is I just started putting more time on my cricket.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, excellent. Tatenda, you then, after coming back, you played for roughly around 5 years till 2012. Is that
Mhm.
right? Yep.
Mhm.
And then you shocked everyone, I think, when you decided to announce your retirement at a very young age of 29.
Mhm.
How did that decision transpire? Just talk us through how you got to that decision.
Um, so just after I came back, when I'm scoring all these runs,
Hmm.
um, I went on a spiritual journey. And the reason why I went on a spiritual journey was, um, there were there was one question that was always playing in my head, and I didn't have an answer to that question. So that question was, what then?
Hmm.
So I would score runs or play well, whatever it was, or go to practice and then come back. So the setup where, I used to sit in the lounge, and there was a sliding door which was really positioned nicely where the sun would come through, and I would sit by the, by the chair, just, enjoying the sunshine. Um, and and my wife Loveness would get in newspaper cutting, Tatenda that does this, whatever. And I never used to read articles, actually,
Okay.
but she used to just collect them and she would put them in a file. And so she'll be busy doing that. And then saying, "Oh, I wish you could read this article. It was a really nice article, blah blah blah." And then we'll just chat about that. And then on one of the days, I said to her, "Yeah," and I said, "What then?" And then she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Yeah, what then? I will go back tomorrow. I will practice and I'll play a game. And then if I keep the fast forward press button on that, it will come to a stage where I'll have to retire. And when I retire, the name will be forgotten, trophies will be thrown away, and the name will soon be forgotten, and other new players will come in." And it says, "Yeah, but you're doing what you love." I said, "Yes, I do understand that, but I'm just trying to play forward with you. There are players that we actually don't even know. I play cricket. I'm a very good student of the game, but there are players that I don't even know, but they were actually good players and played cricket and did well for their countries."
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, "You know what? I actually don't know what you're going on about." And I said, "What then?" I said, "After I retire,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to grow old. And we're all going the same direction." And I said, "Then eventually you're going to be 6 feet under." I said, I'm just tackling questions that people don't want to, to come to terms with. I said,
Of course. Yeah.
"Then we're going to go 6 feet under." And I said, "Is that the end of it? What then?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "I need to find an answer to that." I said, just for my, I just want to be, I just want to understand what goes on after.
Mm-hmm.
If I do, then I'll come back and be at ease. So, and then she says, "Oh, I think what you're looking for is you're thinking about life after death." I said, "Yes."
Mm-hmm.
And I intend to find out about that. So, so I went on a spiritual journey to find that answer. So really,
Excellent.
I think I zoned it down to, where did I come from? What am I doing here on earth? And where am I going? So I said, that's what I'm trying to find out. So, and such, my character being that I'm a very focused individual,
Mm-hmm.
I started struggling on focusing on that spiritual life or spiritual journey, or the search for these answers, and cricket. So it came to a stage where I had to make a decision, and
Mm-hmm.
one had to go, because I'm a single-eyed kind of a person. So I decided cricket was going to go, because eventually it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the MD and I said, I'm in search of answers. So I'm in search of these answers. And cricket has to go for now.
And how was that? How was that decision met by them?
He could not understand it. He says, "You've got no idea how many people want to be in your position." I said, "Yes, I do understand that. But it's my decision. I know that if I continue, I'm not going to be giving my 100% on cricket, because I'm concentrating on this answer, on these questions." So, yes, I do understand that. People will be like, "Oh, you're making money and this and that." I do understand that, but that is not priority to me. So then he says, "And how do I put this across to the public?" Oh,
Of course.
Tatenda has left cricket because he is in search for these answers. Is the world going to understand that? I said, then I think I suggested a wrong suggestion to him. I said to him, whatever you decide to put in the paper, or to the media platforms is up to you. That's your job. But I've just told you the truth. I'm going on a search, on a spiritual journey, and that is the truth.
Mhm.
So the following day, the newspaper article came out. Tatenda is now starting a church. He thought that would make sense. That would make sense in Zimbabwe
Mhm.
because there are a lot of pastors who have got lots of money because, well, I won't go into my personal views on that, but so it would make sense to Zimbabwe, but it would not make sense anywhere else.
Yeah.
So he thought, well, if I say that he's starting a church, that will make sense to people in Zimbabwe. And that's the newspaper article that came out. And then obviously, you know how nowadays they just take out, what has been reported and then they make their own story. So
Exactly.
that's the story that has gone out in the world.
Mhm.
That I was starting a church, which was not, unfortunately,
Which
which was not true.
I think that's a so first of all, thank you very much for being so open and transparent and secondly, I think it is a very brave and courageous decision when you are in the limelight, doing well, representing your country, the career that you've had as probably one of the most successful Zimbabwean cricketers of all time, to then make that decision because you have almost a second calling in your life. I think it's a very bold and brave decision. So well done on that. And ultimately, I think we all need to do what we need to do where we think that our passion and interest lies, because we only get one shot at this life, and we need to make the most of it. So yeah, very much hear what you're saying. And I notice is that in the background? Is that your book, by the way? Keeper of Faith. Is that your book?
Oh yes. Yeah, that's the book that I'll move a little bit to the side.
Yeah, please.
So
And that covers a lot of the things that you've just discussed in terms of
yes,
how.
yes,
Yeah.
it goes into detail. It actually does go into detail. Yeah, of even all this that we're talking about.
Just in the last one or two things for you, if that's okay. Zimbabwean cricket currently. So I still follow Zimbabwean cricket, as I do with world cricket generally. Are there any key names that stick out at the moment, upcoming Zimbabwean cricketers that you think could really make a significant impact in Zimbabwe cricket?
So Blessing Zarabani was one. Richard Ngarava, the left armer,
Okay,
who's
excellent,
so
excellent.
um, Blessing Zarabani. To get back to answering your question, is definitely one of those. Because I saw his work ethics, close and personal. The other one was not part of this group, but I've just been watching from afar, is Ryan Bennett.
Okay.
I only watched him once before, when it was during the under 19 trials, under 19 World Cup trials. And I thought, this kid can play. So it hasn't been a surprise for me to see him doing well in the few matches that he's played for the national team so far. He's fairly new, but he is going to be one to watch for. He's probably going to be the best batter in Zimbabwe in the next 10 years or more.
Okay, excellent. Have you come across Antum Nakvi by any chance, Tatenda, recently in
No, I
Zimbabwean
have
cricket?
not. I have seen what he's done in first class cricket.
Yep.
And scored. I think he scored a double, if I'm not mistaken.
Triple century, I think.
Triple. He
Triple
scored a
century.
triple.
Yeah. Which I think was a Zimbabwean domestic record.
Yes, it would have been. And I see that is also a very good bowler. I have not watched. If I watch one innings or a couple of innings of him, then I'll be able to give a more rounded perception of how I think his cricket is.
Okay. Okay. Tatenda, thank you so very much. You've been an absolute gentleman by giving us the time that you have. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.